Paid ads can't buy trust. You can spend £1 million on a campaign and still get scrolled past. Meanwhile, a founder filming on their phone in a hotel room builds more credibility in 10 minutes than most brands manage in a year. Why? Because trust isn't about reach, it's about proof. Some content formats prove that you're real and others just prove that you paid for placement. So today I'm ranking every content format from the weakest trust signal to the strongest, and there's 9 of them. Worst first, best to last. And I'm going to show you examples of companies doing each one properly because plenty of brands are getting this right at all levels and almost nobody talks about why. Now here's the test you should run on every format you're working on. Can this be faked? If it can, the audience's guard goes up. If it can't, trust goes up. And that's the whole game. So a press release could be written by an agency, a live stream can't. A polished ad can be rented, but a 90-minute conversation on a podcast can't be bluffed. So let's get into it. Number 9, paid ads. Bottom of the list every time. And not because ads don't work, I don't want to hate on ads. They work amazingly for demand capture and direct response, but they do basically nothing for trust because the audience knows exactly what an ad is the second that they see it. Ads amplify trust that already exists somewhere else. So they don't just create it from nothing. And who's doing it well? Surreal, a UK high-protein cereal brand. The whole advertising approach is built on never pretending to be anything other than an advert. They ran these billboards with Serena Williams, Michael Jordan, and Dwayne Johnson, except every one of them was a member of the public who just happened to have the exact same name. And they had these little asterisks on the billboard that told you exactly that. They also ran a campaign in January with like Comic Sans font with typos and word art, totally wacky, describing themselves as the laziest adverts of the year with the line, "Can't be bothered this January?" Same. They also ran a billboard that asked people whether they work in marketing with a yes-no flowchart, and yes leads to please buy our cereal. Now here's how it works. Surreal isn't trying to smuggle in a trust signal into an ad, it's being completely honest about the format. And honesty about the format is a trust signal in itself. They're also not just relying on ads alone. The engine is organic and the ads are the amplifier. It was founded in 2021 by 2 ex-Vita Coco people, and I think it's one of the fastest growing independent cereal brands in the UK. At number 8 is press releases. One up from ads and only just. A press release is just a company talking about itself, dressed up to look like news. Now, people have got very good at spotting the difference. Even when it lands in a legitimate outlet, the borrowed credibility is thin because everybody knows how PR gets placed. But there is a version that works, and it works because of substance rather than distribution. And somebody who does this really well is Tony's Chocolonely. Every year they publish an annual fair report. It's not some glossy, sexy impact brochure. It's an actual accounting of their supply chain. And in it are all the bits that went wrong. I think one report disclosed a number of cases of child labour found inside of their own supply chain. Now, they publish production errors and the goals that they missed. Most PR teams would bury that in an appendix, but Tony's leads with it. And that's why the coverage lands so well. They're respecting the journalist's time. Journalists aren't being handed some sort of claim. They're being handed data that nobody else has, including data that's bad for the company. Now, original research is significantly more likely to earn media coverage than just a standard company announcement, especially self-critical original research. And Tony's grew from a Dutch journalist's investigation into a business turning over more than $200 million. If your PR doesn't contain something that you would rather not admit or something nobody else could have produced, it's not PR, it's basically an ad with bad targeting. Number 7, sponsored and creator partnerships. Better than an ad because you're borrowing a real person's credibility. I've done this work in the past on other brands and other channels, but it is worse than that person's organic content because the audience knows that some money has changed hands. The trust transfer depends almost entirely on two things: how well matched the creator is and how long the relationship lasts. So if you're going to do brand deals, try and make them last a long time. Someone who's done this really well is Gymshark. They built a 3-tier pipeline: some product seeding, then ambassador, then athlete. Creators move up it over time rather than being dropped into campaigns and then pulled out again. The athlete title is public and selectively awarded. They don't just dish them out. Their partnerships team scouts on content quality and the engagement depth and also the alignment rather than just the follower count. So even people with small following can become an athlete. Now, when a creator puts Gymshark athlete in their bio, the audience reads that as an endorsement rather than a paid post. And the durations are the part that most brands miss. Nikki Blackadder and Steve Cook had multi-year associations. Chris Bumstead re-signed and then became part owner in Gymshark. When you see the same person training in the same brand across years, that repetition does something that a single post can't possibly do. I think this program took almost a decade to develop from the first experiments to what it is today, so it isn't a quick win. A small caveat is that in some markets, Gymshark hit influencer saturation, which means that basically the brand is on every feed at once. It starts to feel a bit like a machine rather than an elite club. So volume isn't the win, it's the duration of the partnership. Case studies and customer stories are in at number 6. This is the first format where trust genuinely climbs because there's actual verifiable substance behind all the polish. A named customer, a specific problem with real numbers. Very hard to fabricate, even when the production is slick. Now, who does it well? The better B2B software companies. Airtable's Taylor's guitar story, Gong's PitchBook study, ClickUp's Chick-fil-A story, and Sanity's AT&T story, which embeds a fireside chat between AT&T and Sanity executives rather than just quoting them. And there's a pattern here if you didn't notice it. A recognizable brand, a named stakeholder, and the customer's voice carry the narrative rather than the vendors. Now, there's a statistic that tells you everything about why most companies fail at this. Only around a third of companies include videos in their case studies. But when companies pick out a featured case study, the one they actually put the weight behind has a video in it. Everybody knows that video is the strong asset. The problem is that most people can't get their customers on camera, and that's an asking problem. If you don't ask, you don't get. In at number 5, written long-form content. Text is slower to fake convincingly than most people assume. A consistent voice held across years is very hard to replicate, and it's getting more valuable as generated content floods every channel, and we can all see it. Who does it well? Well, in the fashion space, Hiut Denim do a great job. Cardigan, a company in Wales, lost 400 jobs when their jeans factory closed back in 2002. David and Claire started Hiut in 2012 to put those people back to work. And their newsletter is the engine. 2 emails a week, one that sells, one that informs, entertains, or just makes you smile. David says that much of the company's growth is because of it, and he wrote a book about it. Then there's the yearbook. Over 100 pages, printed every year, essays and ideas rather than product. It's sold out repeatedly. One year it ran months late, and of the 500 people who pre-ordered, not a single one cancelled. Think about what that tells you. They're building trust through writing that being late became a non-event. And in the software space, Buffer does an amazing job here. Since 2013, Buffer published its individual salaries, its salary formula, its revenue, its user numbers, and its funding history on a public dashboard, including the bad bits like the 2016 cash flow crisis and the layoffs that followed. And the reason behind it was that transparency breeds trust, and trust is the foundation of teamwork. Now, the commercial effect showed up in the hiring results, in retention, and in a wave of press coverage that nobody had to pitch. The catch with written content is pretty straightforward. It only builds trust if it has an opinion. Number 4, short form unscripted video. Now we're into formats that put a real person or a real personality in front of you. And who does it well? Duolingo. Duolingo moved spend away from TV ad spots into their organic social. Their content all is built around the owl. It's very fast, it's very self-aware, sometimes it can be unhinged, but it's designed to entertain rather than sell. Now, there's a few details here that matter more than the fun stuff. First is the comments section. That's a part of the brief. The team treats the replies as input for what gets made next, rather than just guessing in a planning meeting. Second, it wasn't an overnight hit. It took dozens of videos before they had a proper win, and then compounding did the rest. And lastly, they built a guardrail rather than rule books. They brought in the mascot specialist who had previously worked on Sesame Street. Their job was to give an honest view on whether a piece of content crosses the line. Now, that's how you keep an unscripted format on brand without strangling it. It became the #1 education app in the App Store, and their team's own framing has since shifted from impressions to actual new user numbers. Okay, we're getting to the sharp end of the stick. Number 3, long form video. This is where you move more from a conversation to a document. Long form video is recorded, so in theory it can be retaken and there's edits, but the duration and the depth makes it very hard to fake a version of yourself for 10, 15, 20 minutes. It's a different animal from a podcast, which is, a conversation between a couple of people. This is one creator or team sustaining something on their own. Who does it well? The Sidemen. 7 British YouTubers with a combined following of over 100 million. Now, their long-form Sidemen Sunday content is a semi-improvised, filmed and edited. It's still very hard to fake. Nobody could manufacture 7 mates with 15 years of history. They then turned that into actual businesses. Sides, the fried chicken chain, which started off as a delivery concept and then moved into physical stores, one coming near me soon. Then Vodka, Surreal, and Side Plus, which is a paid subscription. Now, their marketing director, Fiona Richards, put the mechanism better than I could. These aren't ads, they're entertainment. Now, the bit that people miss with long-form video is the follow-through. Her point is that you can bring a fan through the door on the strength of the audience, but they only come back if the food's good. So long-form gets you the trust, but the product has to hold it. Number 2, podcasting. Hard to fake for one simple reason: duration. Nobody performs a fake version of themselves convincingly for an hour and a half. And who does it really well? Trader Joe's. The American grocery chain has a podcast called Inside Trader Joe's. It started in 2018. It was originally planned as 5 episodes. Now it's years later and they're over 100 episodes in. And 2 things really make it work. It's hosted by actual employees, not presenters. Their marketing director and their VP of marketing products interviewing their own buyers, store captains and crew members. And it's genuinely about the company. They take you inside the tasting panel where products get accepted or rejected. And in one episode, they went through the products that failed. One of the producers said that humility was the thing that landed. It hit number 3 on the iTunes chart the day after it posted. That's the lesson. They didn't hire a host to make themselves sound impressive. They put real people on the microphone and let them admit what didn't work. In at number 1 is live streaming. Top of the list, and it isn't even close. Live means no edit, no retake, no safety net. What you're watching is what happened. And that single fact makes it the hardest possible format to fake and therefore the strongest for trust. Who's doing it well? Live commerce at scale. If you think about it, it's a novelty. But if you look at the numbers, Whatnot, the brand where you can sell things on live stream, did more than $8 billion in live in 2025. 8 billion, roughly double the year before. On Black Friday 2025, they took over $75 million in a single day, and 53% of their sellers now make the majority of their annual sales through live selling, which is up 41% from the year before. And beauty grew nearly 800%. And QVC, a company that's been doing this for decades, love that channel, they framed it in exactly the terms that this whole video is about. Their new business development lead said that artificial intelligence improves personalization, but people still want connection. They want to hear from people they know are real. That is the entire argument for the format in one sentence. Let's recap. Trust rises as fabrication gets harder. Live beats scripted, long beats short, Named customers beat actors, a real person's voice beats a company's borrowed one, and then almost every good example on the list, the brand published something it would have been easier to just not publish. Tony's published its own child labour cases, Buffer published the layoffs, Trader Joe's, the products that flopped, Surreal published billboards that admit that they're cheap, and none of them lost trust for it. They all gained trust. The formats that build the most trust are the ones that companies are usually most frightened of because it removes control. There's no script, there's no retakes, there's no approval chain. But that's exactly why they work, and it's also exactly why most of your competitors won't do them. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.